I've been driving trucks for 15 years. You get used to long, empty highways and the way the night swallows everything outside your headlights. But some roads aren't meant to be driven. I was on a long-haul route from Minnesota to Idaho, carrying a shipment of industrial equipment. It was late, past midnight, and the snowstorm had come out of nowhere, swallowing the freeway in thick, swirling white. Visibility dropped fast, and my GPS started glitching, recalculating. I wasn't worried at first. I'd driven in worse conditions, and I still had half a tank left. But then the route changed, guiding me off the main highway onto a back road I didn't recognize. A shortcut, it claimed, one that would save me an hour. I should have ignored it. The moment my tires hit that road, something felt off. The pavement looked old, cracked in places. But what unsettled me was the silence. Even through the storm, there was no echo of wind against the truck, no crunch of snow under my tires, just an unnatural hush that made my skin prickle. I turned on the radio for some background noise, flipping through static. For a moment, I thought I caught a voice, low and whispering, but when I turned it up, all I got was more static. Then I noticed the road. No signs, no mile markers, no tire tracks, not even my own. It was as if the road had been waiting, untouched, just for me. The snow thickened and my headlights barely cut through it. I gripped the wheel tighter, unease crawling up my spine. And then, for the first time that night, I saw something ahead. A gas station. It stood alone in the snow, its old neon sign flickering weakly. A relief, right? I could stop, warm up, maybe check a paper map to see where the hell I was. But as I pulled in, my headlights illuminated something that made my breath hitch. The gas station had no footprints, no tire tracks, as if no one had been here in years. I killed the engine and stepped out into the freezing air, boots crunching against untouched snow. My breath came out in thick clouds as I approached the door, heart pounding harder than it should have. The door wasn't locked. The bell jingled as I stepped inside, but no one greeted me. The place smelled stale, like dust and something faintly rotten. And then I saw the newspapers, stacks of them, sitting by the register, all yellowed with age. The top one made my stomach drop. Local trucker mysteriously disappears, last seen on Route 89. My blood ran cold, my eyes darted to the date. December 4th, 1986. I grabbed another one from a few years later. Another driver lost to the highway? Authorities baffled. Another. Trucker vanishes without a trace, only truck found abandoned. The pictures. My hand shook as I lifted a faded article. The truck was the same model as mine, same license plate. The lights flickered. A creak sounded from the back of the store. I turned slowly, heart hammering. The storage room door stood slightly ajar, swinging on rusted hinges. Beyond it, darkness yawned, swallowing the faint light from the store. And then, a single boot print appeared in the dust. Not mine. I backed toward the door, forcing my breathing to stay quiet. The moment my hand touched the cold metal handle, the radio behind the counter crackled to life. Through the static, a voice whispered, "You shouldn't be here." I ran. I practically leapt into my truck, slamming the door and locking it. My fingers fumbled as I turned the key. The engine roared to life, and I threw it into reverse, tires screeching on the ice. The headlights cut across the gas station one last time. And I saw footprints leading from the woods. Fresh, deep, heading straight for my truck. I floored it. The road stretched ahead, an endless ribbon of white. I drove for miles, but the unease never left me. The silence. The unnatural way the snow never seemed to accumulate on my windshield. And then, my headlights hit something that made my stomach turn. The gas station. I had looped back. "No," I muttered. gripping the wheel tighter. No, no, no. I turned around, driving faster. 15 minutes, 30, an hour, and yet the gas station again. But this time, something was different. Through the passenger side mirror, I saw it. A figure sitting in my truck. I whipped my head around, nothing there. But the mirror showed him perfectly. A man in a trucker's jacket, grinning, with my face. The cab filled with a low, whispering static. My own voice whispered from the radio, "It's your turn now." The truck shut down. The headlights flickered off. The cold seeped into my bones as my breath came out in ragged gasps. I reached for my phone, dead. In the rearview mirror, my reflection smiled. And then, the passenger door slowly creaked. Just the cold. The overwhelming wrongness as I stumbled out of the truck, running blindly into the storm. My body felt numb. My thoughts jumbled. I remember collapsing in the snow, the world fading around me. And then, warmth. I woke up in a hospital bed. They told me I was found on the side of a highway that didn't match my route. My truck? Gone. The road? They said it doesn't exist. I quit trucking after that. But sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet, I hear the radio static, and I swear I hear my own voice whispering, "It's your turn now." I wasn't supposed to live here. The apartment was a last-minute find, a Craigslist listing with a price so low I should have known something was off. But when you're broke and desperate, you don't ask questions. You just sign the lease and hope the heat works. It was winter when I moved in, the kind of cold that makes the air feel sharp in your lungs. The building was old, the hallways dimly lit, the walls stained yellow with time. But I told myself it was fine. That first night, I barely slept. I wasn't scared, not yet, but something felt wrong. It was too quiet. No hum of distant TVs, no muffled conversations, no pipes groaning in the walls. Just this heavy, unnatural silence, like the whole building was holding its breath. Then, at exactly 3:12 a.m., I heard it. A soft shuffling sound coming from the apartment next door. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. The landlord had said that unit was vacant. Had someone broken in? I got up and crept to my door, pressing my ear against the wood. The sound had stopped. The hallway was silent again. I told myself it was just the old building settling. I was wrong. I met him the next day. An older man, maybe in his 60s, standing in the hallway as I locked my door. He had this thin, pale face, deep-set eyes that darted around nervously. He didn't introduce himself, just said, "You live in 209 now?" I nodded. His face darkened. "Listen," he said, "if you hear knocking at night, don't open the door." I let out a small laugh, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. His eyes bore into mine, dead serious. "No matter what you hear," he said, "no matter who it sounds like, keep it shut." Then he turned and shuffled back into his unit. I stood there for a long time watching his door, a knot forming in my stomach. That night, I double-locked my door. I wasn't scared, not really. But I couldn't shake what he'd said. No matter who it sounds like. What the hell did that mean? I fell asleep eventually. And at 3:12 a.m., the knocking started. It was soft at first, just a gentle tap, tap, tap. I sat up, my breath hitching in my throat. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the inside of my apartment. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, scanning the room. Nothing. I swallowed hard, trying to calm my breathing. Maybe I had imagined it. Bang, bang, bang. A violent pounding at my front door. I nearly dropped my phone. The knocking was too loud, too forceful, rattling the door in its frame. Then, "Please," a voice sobbed from the other side. A woman's voice. "Help me. Please. I think someone's following me." I felt my whole body lock up. Because the voice, it sounded exactly like mine. I stepped back, shaking my head. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. Then, the doorknob turned. Not just rattled, turned, like someone was trying to open it. But the deadbolt held. My hands were ice cold. I forced myself to step forward, heart hammering in my chest. I looked through the peephole. Nothing. The hallway was empty. But the moment I stepped back, a whisper came from the other side. "I know you're in there." I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I went straight to the landlord's office. He looked up from his desk, raising an eyebrow. "Everything okay?" I took a deep breath. "The apartment next door. Who lives there?" His expression flickered. "No one. 210's been vacant for years." My stomach twisted. "Are you sure?" I asked. He sighed. "Look, I don't know what you heard, but trust me, no one's been in that unit for a long time." That was when I started digging. I searched online for anything about the building. Nothing. But then I found a forum thread from 10 years ago. Anyone else lived at Maplewood Apartments? Weird stuff happening in 209? My blood ran cold. I clicked the post. The user described exactly what had happened to me. The knocking, the voices, the thing outside the door that sounded like them. There was one reply, just one. "If you're still there, check the closet." I left my pulse roaring in my ears. I turned, slowly, to look at my closet. The journal was buried in the back, hidden beneath the floorboards. It was old, the pages yellowed, the ink smudged in places. The first few entries were normal, but then the knocking started last night. I thought it was the neighbor, but when I checked, the hallway was empty. Then I heard my voice outside the door. My hands trembled as I flipped ahead. I saw something through the peephole. It was me. But it wasn't. I slammed the book shut, my pulse hammering. That was when I heard it. A slow creak from my front door. I turned, ice filling my veins. The deadbolt was unlocked. I didn't remember unlocking it. Then, a whisper, inches from the door. "Let me in." I ran. I don't even remember grabbing my keys, my wallet, anything. I just yanked open the door and bolted down the hallway. But as I passed 210, the door was wide open. Inside, there was nothing. No furniture, no lights, just a dark, gaping emptiness. I fled. I never went back. I broke my lease the next morning, packed my things, and got the hell out. The landlord didn't even argue. I think he knew. A few weeks later, I got curious. I looked up the old forum post again, scrolled to the bottom. There was one final comment. "I left, but sometimes, late at night, I still hear the knocking." I stared at my screen, my breath coming fast, because outside my apartment door, someone knocked. Tap, tap, tap. Then, my own voice whispered, "I know you're in there." We were supposed to be back by now. The plan was simple: a weekend hiking trip in the mountains, one last winter adventure before spring melted everything away. Me, Chris, Hannah, and Jake, we'd done this 100 times. We knew the trails, packed smart, checked the forecast. But the storm came out of nowhere. Thick, heavy snow poured from the sky, swallowing the trail behind us. Within minutes, the path was gone, replaced by an endless white void. The wind howled through the trees, making it impossible to hear anything but its low, eerie moan. "Shit," Jake muttered, tightening his jacket. "We have to turn back, but back where?" Every direction looked the same. Then we saw it, an old cabin, barely visible through the snow. A small dark shape crouched among the trees, its roof sagging under layers of ice. No lights, no smoke from the chimney. A bad feeling curled in my gut, but we had no choice. We trudged through the knee-deep snow, Hannah pounding on the door. "Hello?" Her voice was barely a whisper against the wind. "Anyone here?" No answer. Chris pushed the door. It creaked open, revealing dusty wooden floors and an unnatural silence. The air inside felt thick, like stepping into a place that hadn't been disturbed in a long, long time. We hurried in, shaking the cold from our bones. But as I turned to shut the door, my stomach dropped. There were footprints in the snow, leading inside the cabin, but none leading out. We should have left. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe an old hunter's cabin, long abandoned. But that didn't explain the footprints. It didn't explain why the fireplace was still warm. Jake tossed down his pack, rubbing his hands together. At least it's shelter. Chris found a lantern and lit it, the glow casting strange, flickering shadows on the walls. That's when we saw the markings, deep scratches in the wood, spiraling shapes carved into every surface. "What the hell is this?" Hannah whispered, running her fingers over the grooves. No one answered. Chris found an old journal tucked under a broken chair. The pages were brittle, the ink smudged, but I could still make out the words. "We are not alone. It comes in the storm. It takes our names. It wears our faces." I swallowed hard, flipping ahead. "Do not go outside. Do not answer when it knocks. It will sound like someone you love." My hand shook as I read the final scrawled line. We were 4. Now we are 3. A slow, creeping fear settled in my chest. I looked up. The 4 of us sat in a circle around the fire. 4. I forced myself to breathe, get a grip. The journal was probably just some paranoid hunter's ramblings, but then I noticed something. Hannah, normally chatty, always cracking jokes, was sitting completely still, staring at the flames. "Hey," I nudged her. "You good?" She turned slowly, blinking like she'd just woken up. Yeah. Sorry, I thought I heard something." We all listened. Nothing but the wind outside, rattling against the cabin like a living thing. But deep in my gut, I knew. Something was watching us. The knocking started at 3:12 a.m., soft at first. Tap, bang, bang, bang. I bolted upright, my heart pounding. The others were awake too, eyes wide with fear. "Who?" Chris whispered, but I shook my head sharply. "Do not answer when it knocks." Jake grabbed his flashlight, inching toward the door. "Don't," I hissed. He ignored me. We all held our breath as he peered through the small, frost-covered window. His body went rigid. "What is it?" Hannah whispered. Jake's voice was barely audible. "Us." I moved closer, dread twisting in my stomach. Outside, half buried in snow, stood 4 figures. They were us, identical, same clothes, same faces, but their eyes were hollow, black pits, empty and staring, and they were smiling. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. "That's not real." Chris grabbed Jake's arm. "We need to go, now." Then, the door handle turned. I lunged forward, slamming the deadbolt just in time. The thing outside let out a low, distorted laugh. A voice followed, soft and pleading. "Let me in. It's cold." It was my own voice. Hannah screamed. We backed away, pressing against the far wall. The lantern flickered, the shadows twisting into something unnatural. Then Jake did the unthinkable. He unlocked the door. A gust of freezing wind exploded into the cabin, knocking the lantern over. The fire died instantly, plunging us into darkness. I couldn't see. I couldn't breathe. And then, a hand grabbed my arm. I thrashed, kicking blindly, but the grip was impossibly strong. Cold fingers dug into my skin, pulling me toward the open door, toward the figures outside. Then, a flare. Chris had grabbed one from his pack, igniting it with a sharp hiss. The red glow burned through the darkness, casting flickering shadows against the walls. For a split second, I saw them. The figures, United States. Their mouths stretched into unnatural grins, jagged teeth gleaming. Then they screamed, a sound like wind through broken glass. And they were gone. The door slammed shut on its own. We didn't sleep. At dawn, the storm had passed. The sky was pale, the snow untouched, like nothing had ever happened. But Jake was gone. His sleeping bag was still zipped. His boots sat neatly by the door, but he was just gone. We searched for hours, calling his name, our voices swallowed by the silence. No footprints, no signs of struggle, just nothing. When we finally made it back to the trailhead, a rescue team was waiting. They'd been looking for us since yesterday. "We lost one," Chris said numbly. "Jake." The rescue worker frowned. "Who's Jake?" My stomach dropped. They had no record of a fourth hiker, no extra name on our permit, no missing person matching his description. It was like he had never existed. Weeks passed. I tried to forget. Then, one night, I got an email. No sender, no subject, just an attachment, a photo. An old hiking group, standing outside the same cabin. Their faces blurred with age, except for one, Jake, grinning, standing among them, like he had always been there.